The sun rises in the Tang Valley and sets in the Yu Yuan. Born in the capital of Ying, the soul returns to Mount Tai. He made Jiang open his eyes. If she wants to be herself again, she needs to be a person first. Keywords of the novel. Palm Technique without pop-ups, Palm Technique TXT Complete Collection Download, Palm Technique Latest Chapter Reading. Chapter 1. Wedge. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The source has no content or has errors. Chapter 2. Ghosts. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2 Ghosts. The sky is still dark, and the bustling city of Linchuan in the daytime is like a dormant giant beast, silent in the silent night. At this moment it was only a quarter of an hour before the city gate opened. As it was still early in the morning, there were not many people accompanying at the city gate, only a few soldiers guarding, appearing somewhat desolate. It's winter and the weather is cold and tight. Even though dressed in thick clothes and standing in front of the city gate, the guards couldn't help but shrink their necks due to the piercing cold wind. Damn it! It's so cold today, one of them cursed with a hand. The other short guy couldn't help but stomp his feet and said, yeah. In this kind of day, sitting in my own room, grilling a fire, and having a few drinks with my brothers is what makes me feel at ease. Don't mention it. Meow. A mournful meow came from somewhere, and then a black shadow quickly emerged from the grass. This cat, barking so mournfully, seems to be in heat again. Hee hee. The shorter one smiled inexplicably and said, brother, let's go out for a few drinks tomorrow. After speaking, he even poked the person next to him with his elbow. The person next to him saw the situation and coaxed, old Lou, it seems you can't hold back anymore. It's better to marry a woman quickly. It's time to marry a woman. They all say, wife, child, hot Kong head. Ha ha ha. A few people laughed and dispelled some of the winter's coldness. On the open street, the cold wind whizzed past, causing the branches of trees on the roadside to sway. Not far away, a cart creaked over the cobblestone road and slowly drove towards the city gate. The ox cart was carrying a large barrel, filled with something that looked so full that even the old yellow ox pulling the cart had to exert all its strength. As the ox cart approached, an indescribable odor followed. The gatekeeper looked at the nearby ox cart and couldn't help but cover his nose. He frowned and said, go, go. Sitting diagonally on the ox cart, the tippler was dressed in grey old cotton clothes, his hands wrapped in sleeves, and the reins of the cart were weakly squeezed in his sleeves. Upon hearing this, he couldn't help but chuckle and reveal his yellow teeth, saying, how many days have you been on duty today, little brother? Thank you for your hard work. On a cold winter day, as he spoke, a mist came out. The soldier who covered his nose said in a muffled voice, it's all like this, Lao Zhao, hurry up. It's suffocating. The tippler chuckled and said, all right. After speaking, he pulled his hand out of his sleeve, gently whipped it, and the legs of the old yellow ox pulling the cart were also getting faster. The ox cart, carrying several wooden barrels packed to the brim, swayed past the city gate and headed towards the outside. As the ox cart moved away, the gatekeeper let go and took a deep breath. The cold winter air entered his throat, leaving him shivering all over. The city gate gradually regained silence, and it was still early, with no one coming or going. Several soldiers guarding the gate leaned against the city gate, dozing off. Suddenly, a rapid sound of horse hooves could be heard rushing from afar towards the city gate from the official road. The soldier guarding the door quickly stood up straight and looked towards the direction of arrival. At dawn in winter, there was still a hint of mist, and in the dim sky, one person and one horse arrived at the bottom of the city in no time. Stop. Get off your horse and check. The soldier guarding the gate extended his spear and stopped the person. Hush. The man suddenly stopped by pulling on the reins, only to hear a loud roar from the horse. He took out a token from his pocket and said, I am from the He family in the city. There is an urgent matter to return to the city. It's the He family. The soldiers looked at the intricate patterns, then withdrew their spears and let the people go. The man raised his whip and rushed into the city one by one, rushing further and further into the dawn. The sound of horse hooves echoed through the quiet streets. I don't know what's urgent. This thought only passed in their hearts, and the soldiers leaned against the city gate, dozing off their unfinished slumber. Linchuan County is a large county under the rule of Jiangzhou, and the official roads outside the city are also neatly and flat. Lao Zhao walked leisurely with his cart, without worrying about spilling the contents of the bucket. The things in this bucket, although dirty, are good for farming manure. Harvested from the city, dried in the sun, transported to rural villages, and sold to those farmers, it can also earn a lot of money. Lao Zhao now relies on this to support his family. Others find this matter dirty and foul-smelling all day, but he doesn't mind it. What can earn money is a good thing. They are not picky about where they come from. Moreover, compared to farming, dump laborers can make considerable profits. Previously, there were people who fought fiercely to seize the territory of Yixiang. The quality of night incense produced in different areas of the city is also rated as 369 due to the different population. The higher the quality, the higher the selling price, the more people compete, and the more intense the competition. Lao Zhao was mainly responsible for the western part of the city, where ordinary vendors lived. However, even so, this job was earned by their family through hard work. I heard that there was a man named Luo Hui in the previous dynasty who made this his profession and surprisingly had a huge fortune. He doesn't seek wealth from the wealthy side, but he also wants to earn the trust of an outsider. The ox cart walked along the official road for about 10 miles, turned a corner, and then entered a small path. This road was not as spacious and easy to walk as the official road. Lao Zhao's hand, pulling the reins, moved slightly, and the ox cart slowed down closely. Along the way, there were weeds and forests, and the cold wind blew by, making the withered grass rustle. This path is not far from Chu Mountain. He walks day by day and is very familiar with it, so Lao Zhao is not afraid. Gollum, at this moment, my stomach was in turmoil. Lao Zhao secretly spat and said, "It's really not the right time. In this winter, taking off my pants and squatting in that wasteland, most of my buttocks are not going to be numbed by the cold." He cursed his mother, but still stopped the cart, cleared away the dry grass, and found a piece of open space in the forest. He lifted his cotton jacket and squatted down. As the cold wind blew, Lao Zhao instantly felt half of his buttocks numb. He only wanted to fight quickly and make a quick decision, but his stomach kept rumbling incessantly. Lao Zhao cursed inwardly again, "It's really not the right time." A rustling sound came from behind. "Is there still a rabbit in this big winter?" Lao Zhao turned his head. The sky was already dawn, and as it was winter, the forest was still shrouded in a faint mist. At this moment, one could vaguely see things. I saw a small mound slowly rising on the flat ground about 2 zhang away, and with the faint rustling sound, the soil continued to tremble. Oh! Lao Zhao was overjoyed, afraid that it wasn't a rabbit drilling a hole, was it? It is said that there are 3 caves of cunning rabbits, and it is winter at this time. Perhaps there is a wild rabbit who wants to dig more holes so that he can escape at any time. If that's the case, we can add some wild game today. Lao Zhao couldn't help but rub his hands, which were stiff from the cold wind. He was afraid that the rabbit would run away, and at this moment, he didn't care about his tumultuous belly. He quickly vented his anger and lifted his pants, walking lightly towards the small mound of soil that was still bulging. The wild rabbit was particularly agile, and Lao Zhao's footsteps were extremely light, even his breathing couldn't help but become a bit lighter. Approaching closer, I saw the small mound of soil growing higher and higher, and the soil debris still rustling on the ground. The surrounding land was not frozen as hard as other places, but rather a bit loose, probably the one that this rabbit had dug out earlier. Lao Zhao was about to dig the rabbit hole when suddenly a hint of plain white appeared below. Yo, it seems to be a white-haired rabbit, which is rare in the wild. Lao Zhao picked up a dead branch from the side, leaned closer, and bent down to dig out the rabbit. I saw that the plain white was becoming more and more visible, and then I reached out a hand from the soil. That hand has a pale complexion, isn't it exactly the white rabbit he thought it was? After reaching out from the pile of dirt, the pale palm moved and shook off the soil covering it, followed by a small arm exposed. The small arm covered in soil waved as if groping outside for something. Then, the entire area around the small mound began to move, and the soil began to brush down. Lao Zhao's mind was blank, he was stunned for a moment before he screamed in agony, "Ghost!" He ran straight away. Only the heart-wrenching cries echoed through the empty forest. End of this chapter. Who is Chapter 3? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Who is Chapter 3? Upon hearing the shouting that echoed through the entire forest, the arm in motion couldn't help but pause. Afterwards, the soil fell even faster, and the small mound of soil quickly swelled up. The pale and slender arm that had previously been exposed groped back and forth, pulling the soil from above to the side. In no time, a person covered in mud crawled out from inside. The person stood up with arms propped up, swaying and shaking their clothes, as the soil rustled down. Looking at the unfamiliar forest in front of her, she couldn't help but be stunned for a long time. The cold wind in the forest blew hard, curling up her long hair, covering her head and face. She frowned, reached out her pale hand, smoothed out her messy long hair, and then slowly moved forward with her head down. Dawn has broken, and the gate of Linchuan City is gradually becoming lively. Those who carry baskets and burdens go to the city early to work and do business, and there are also those who wake up early and rush to other places to make a living. Coming and going, in and out, is the beginning of a new day. Suddenly, a commotion disrupted the order in front of the city gate. Make way, make way. Hurry up and let's go out first. A large group of people and horses rushed towards the city like a whirlwind. I saw the current few riding tall horses, followed by 10 or 20 guards. The guard was about to step forward and stop these unruly people when he saw the wooden card in their hand. The complex pattern features a small seal carving with the character, "He," in the middle. He had just seen this token before. Another member of the He family, I don't know what big deal happened to rush in and out like this early in the morning. He took a step back and shouted at the queue, stand aside, let them go out first." The people are unaware of this, and although they have some grievances in their hearts, they still give way according to their words. Only when the crowd rushed out did the city gate restore its previous order. Which family is this? There's so much commotion. The He family, right? I just saw the token raised by the person in front of me. The aristocratic families and clans in the city all have family badges for identification when traveling. This He family is a prominent family in Linchuan County. I heard that my ancestors were important ministers of the previous dynasty, and now they have even given birth to a crown princess. Unfortunately, the He family was not fortunate. At that time, the crown prince was caught up in the rebellion by Prince Su, and the crown prince and his consort died in the turmoil. They left early. He Jiashu lost his composure and returned to his ancestral hometown of Linchuan County with his tribe, and then fell silent. However, no matter how quiet it is, such a vast and enduring family that has lasted for nearly 100 years is not something that ordinary people like them can glimpse. I don't know what happened, it's so inspiring. Who knows? The person who spoke earlier shook his head. However, the affairs of these wealthy families have nothing to do with us. He patted the bamboo basket behind him, which contained fresh winter bamboo shoots to be sold at the market. Filling our stomachs is our top priority, he said. Yo, your winter bamboo shoots are fresh. I think they can sell for a good price. Yes, I deliberately dug it up in the mountain. As the new year approaches, just preparing for it is a significant expense. Yes. After a few words of chatter, they turned to talking about other things. Besides, the people of the He family rushed towards the direction of Chu Mountain in a grand manner when they left the city. The person riding the horse takes the lead, dressed in a Tibetan brocade robe with a rich and noble temperament, and looks like the owner of He mansion. He looked anxious and called out to his guards, "I'll take the people over first. Wei Lu, you take the rest of the people and come over quickly." These guards, no matter how well trained they are, cannot run a horse on both legs. He was in a hurry to rush to Chu Mountain, so he had to first bring the people on horseback to check the situation. "Yes, Arung." A sturdy middle-aged man in the guard clasped his fists and took orders. Lord He Jiang raised his whip and rushed out with people, rolling up a few strands of dust on the official road. A few people and horses gradually drifted away, but disappeared in a moment. Wei Lu, with the remaining guards, ran and followed up. The sky was already bright, and people were coming and going on the official road. Watching this rapidly advancing team, everyone consciously stepped aside to avoid being bumped into, and occasionally glanced sideways. Wei Lu led his subordinates and ran out for about 10 miles. From afar, he saw a figure walking slowly in the middle of the road, coming towards him without hiding or avoiding. He tugged at his throat and said, "Those ahead, please make way down." The person seemed to have not heard, just hanging his head and moving forward bit by bit. Wei Lu had no choice but to ask his subordinates to slow down and say, "Stay on the side, don't bump into anyone." The team hurriedly brushed past the person. If such a group of people rush over and don't dodge, that person will either die or be injured. The official road is so wide, does this person have to walk in the middle of the road? A man, who was following behind, felt strange and turned to look at the person. At this glance, she couldn't help but pause and hesitated, saying, "Seventh lady." The person seemed to have not heard, just buried his head and continued forward. She walked extremely slowly, with a hint of stagnation in her footsteps. Alman walked around to her and called out again, "Seventh lady, is that you?" The person seemed to finally hear the sound, slowly lifted their head, and glanced at her inexplicably. A man widened his eyes in surprise, his face full of joy, and said, "It's really you, seventh lady. I said I wouldn't mistake anyone." She waved her hand and shouted ahead, "Old way, old way. Don't run away, there's no need to search anymore. The seventh lady is here." She tugged at her throat, only then did she summon the wave of people who had already run far away. The person seemed to be suppressed by the deafening and imposing voice, frowning lightly and taking a few steps away from her without any trace. A man stopped calling out to Wei Lu before turning his head to look. She didn't take a closer look just now. At this moment, she saw that the person's clothes were all wrinkled, and their head was still covered in mud. When the winter wind blew, the soil between their hair fell without a trace. This is not what the seventh lady of the He family would look like. She couldn't help but be shocked and asked, "Madam Qi, what's wrong with you? Our family is going to be extremely anxious. As soon as we received the news from Yunfu, the third lord quickly gathered the people from the mansion to go to the cloud residence to find you. If we can't find you again, we'll have to search the mountains." The person looked at her without any words. 7 women. Who is this person again? Is it precisely the original owner of this body? But, I am clearly as soon as her thoughts turned in her heart, she felt a powerful and thunderous pressure pressing towards her divine soul, making her gasp for breath. She remembered the faint chant in her ear before she fell into a coma. The sun rises in Tonggu and falls in Yu Yuan. Born in Yingdu, the soul returns to Taishan. The person raised their hand and gently rubbed the cloth wrapped around their neck. I just don't know, is she a human or a ghost now? Who should have the surname and name? End of this chapter. Chapter 4. He Chi. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. He Chi Aman saw that she was silent, her face pale and her body was on the verge of collapse. He hurriedly reached out to help her sit down by the roadside. "Madam Chi, please sit down and rest first." Wei Lu ran back with the people and saw a man sitting on the roadside, supporting a person. Judging from her figure, she does look like the seventh lady. 7 women. Wei Lu called out softly. The person lifted their head and had a plain white slapped face. Even though they described themselves as disheveled, they still had an unparalleled appearance. She is indeed the 7th wife of the He family, who is most favored and indulging by the family owner. It's just like this, it's really a bit embarrassing. His body was covered in mud and dirt, and he even had a cut on his forehead. There was a circle of cloth wrapped around his neck, which seemed to have been torn off from his clothes, but he didn't know if his neck was injured. Is the 7th lady in big trouble? The person shook their head and remained silent. Wei Lu frowned, worried in his heart, lowered his voice, and asked, "What happened to Lady Qi?" A few days ago, Lady Qi told her that she was going to Chu Mountain to search for mineral pigments for painting. So she took her 2 maidservants and the coachman Yin Fu up to Chu Mountain. She acted in a way that was somewhat different from an ordinary lady. At the age when others were learning to make needlework, she had to run outside. Not to mention the neighboring counties around Linchuan, she also wanted to go whenever she wanted. The lady was dissatisfied, but it was not enough to be favored by the master. Not only did she have a few specialized guards assigned to her, but even the maids and coachmen around her were also skilled. This time, the 7th lady went to Mount Chu without any guards, but it was only 20.30 miles away from Linchuan City, and there had never been any bandits. The Yingju temple above is bustling with incense, and due to the frequent visits of wealthy women and their families in the city, there are many Taoist priests guarding the temple. 7th lady is not the first time she has gone, let alone Qingzhu and Qiongji, who are closely following, should be very safe. It's hard to imagine, but unfortunately, there was an accident this time. Wei Lu sighed in his heart. This description must be about encountering something, and it's still a big deal. The head of the household's body has become increasingly weak recently, and I don't know if he can withstand this winter. The 7th lady didn't see this all night. The lady kept it a secret and didn't dare to tell him. After receiving the news, she quickly called the 3rd lord over and took the family guards to search. If we can't find it again, we might have to borrow troops from the county governor to find it. Unexpectedly, everyone hurriedly went, but on the way, they met Lady 7 who came back on her own. Wei Lu and others really breathed a sigh of relief, but their hearts were still held up and did not land. 7th lady, with her current appearance and injuries on her body, did not know what kind of trouble she was going to cause at home when she returned. He instructed his subordinates, "Hurry up and go to Chu Mountain to inform Lord Sanlang and the others. Tell them that Lady Qi has found her and ask him to bring the rest back. I'm afraid there might be a storm in the mansion." Wei Lu and the others came out in a hurry, without a carriage. Currently, Lady 7 was still injured, and when the 3rd lord and the others turned around, they didn't know when it would be. He asked, "Can the 7th lady still walk?" "Ku." The 7th lady spoke, her voice hoarse and blurry, with an indescribable aura. Wei Lu's heart skipped a beat, and he looked at the cloth strip around her neck. It must have hurt her throat, probably not lightly. He then said, "Let's go back first. Your injury, we need to quickly invite a doctor to take a look." The 7th lady nodded and was about to stand up, but her body involuntarily shook. A man quickly stepped forward and helped her. "7th lady, I'll carry you." "That's good." Wei Lu nodded. "There are no carriages at the moment, so let a man carry you for now." "A man, this black girl, is very strong." After being brought back by the 7th lady, she stayed in the backyard chopping firewood and setting fire. Today, Lord Sanlang called out to the guards in the mansion and went out to search for Lady Qi. This girl is determined to follow along and find her. 2 years ago, there was a famine in my house. It was Lady 7 who bought me back and saved my life. Now that she is gone, I will definitely retrieve her and protect Lady 7. As there were only so many people who could use it, the black girl was willing to go, so Sanlang Lord followed her. At present, it's not easy for the guards to carry the 7th lady on their backs, but a man can do it. This girl has great strength and fast legs. The 7th lady waved her hand and was about to signal herself to come, but suddenly a sharp pain came from her divine soul, causing her whole body to lose strength and slide down. The early morning sunlight, even with a hint of winter coolness, slanted through the roadside forests and mist, casually sprinkling onto the human world. The 7th lady suddenly trembled, with a painful expression on her face, and she shrank into a ball. Alman was shocked and said, "What's wrong? 7th lady, what's wrong with you?" Qi Nyangzi's eyes were black with pain, and her exposed skin was white, tender, and delicate, only she knew. The pain churning there was like a scorching fire. The whole soul seemed to be churning in a hot sea of oil. Light. She forcefully suppressed the sharp pain in her divine soul, her teeth trembling involuntarily. Cover the light. Alman quickly reacted and quickly took off his coat, covering her head and face. "Madam Qi, what's wrong with you? Where are you feeling unwell?" Wei Lu also quickly stepped forward. The 7th lady shrank her hand in her clothes and pulled on Alman's outer garment, covering herself tightly. The sharp pain in the divine soul gradually faded, but still carried a sense of anxiety. Wei Lu felt uneasy and repeatedly asked a few questions. It took her a long time to hear her say in a muffled voice, "No problem. I'm not feeling well and can't get any sunlight right now." Upon hearing this, Wei Lu's eyebrows furrowed again, wondering what kind of illness it was. It's better to go back quickly and invite a doctor to have a diagnosis for the appearance of Lady Qi. On the road, there was a constant stream of pedestrians, and a person carrying a tung oilcloth umbrella passed by. Wei Lu caught up with him and stopped him. He took out 50 coins and handed them over. "Brother, can you sell me this umbrella?" The person couldn't help but widen their eyes. On this sunny day, someone paid a lot of money to buy his broken umbrella. 50 yuan has also been used by a family for several days. He usually makes a living by taking on some odd jobs, and there are households in the city who build houses and let him go for a few days. I was afraid of rain and snow when I came back, so I put on my rain gear at home. The top quality oil paper umbrellas in the market are only 20 or 30 yuan. Are you really going to buy it? Wei Lu nodded and said, "Really, I'm useful at this moment." The person nodded at him, afraid that he might have changed his mind, and quickly pulled out a large umbrella from the basket behind him and handed it to him. Wei Lu expressed his gratitude, took the oilcloth umbrella and spread it open, covering the head of Lady 7. A homemade oilcloth umbrella made by farmers, boiled with natural tung oil and coated with pure cotton umbrella surface. The umbrella surface is thick and durable. The big umbrella was spread open, immediately covering the entire 7th lady in the shadow under the umbrella. She suddenly felt much better, and her grip on her clothes also loosened a gap. Looking up, she saw Wei Lu standing by with an umbrella. "Madam Qi, let a man carry you on his back." She nodded, stood up with the help of a man, leaned onto a man's back, and tightly grasped the clothes covering her head and face with one hand. With a slight effort on his legs, a man lifted her on his back. "Madam 7, please hold on to my shoulder." A man was strong and felt light carrying someone on his back. He walked effortlessly, while Wei Lu held a large umbrella and closely followed him. The group rushed towards the city gate like this. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Order Jiang. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Order Jiang. The He family is currently in a state of panic. The 7th lady is missing. This is a deadly event. Madame Song of the He family sat in the flower hall, dejectedly rubbing her forehead. She was awakened at the hour of her birth, and after arranging for people to search for her, she sat in the flower hall waiting for news. If you still can't find it, you'll have to take a post and ask the county governor's office to send troops to find it. This matter needs to be kept from the groom. His health is getting worse and he really can't bear any more fright. Although the seventh lady was not born to her, it was for the good of the Langzhu that the Song family also hoped that she would never have any trouble. 14 years ago, just 3 months after giving birth to her youngest daughter Ying, the groom brought back a newborn baby girl from outside and said she had given birth outside. The mother of this child had difficulty giving birth, but she once had a life-saving kindness to the groom, and later followed him, leaving only such a child. The groom discussed with her to record this child under her name. In this way, this child will be the legitimate daughter and will not suffer any injustice in marriage in the future. The always strong groom lowered his head in front of her for the first time. She doesn't have a taste in her heart, but what can she do? There are no more people left, no matter how much we fight, we cannot fight for the dead. Perhaps she is ashamed of her birth mother, but the groom dotes on this child extremely. Her food and clothing habits are not much different from those of other children in the mansion, but that extra emphasis is reflected elsewhere. When the seventh lady was 7 years old, the groom put in a lot of effort and personally went to Jiangzhou to invite the famous Sun Chuo's son as her host. Although the children at home all learn together, they may not yet understand who is the most valued one, but adults can see it at a glance. This child is not a gentle person. She doesn't love needlework, so the groom doesn't let anyone restrain her. She loves riding horses, so she specially found a good horse for her. She loves painting and looks for minerals to use as painting pigments everywhere, so she has guards accompanying her on her travels. The rules and constraints of the aristocratic family seem to be beyond her control. Jiang. Even the name is different from the young lady of the same generation in the mansion. She thought that without constraints, there would always be mistakes. But apart from being arrogant and reckless, Lady 7 has never made any major mistakes. She had to turn a blind eye to everything, as long as it didn't cause a commotion, let her do whatever she wanted. Now, nothing can happen. The tea on the table has been changed several times and has now cooled down completely. The 2 young ladies in the long room were by her side, with a heavy expression and afraid to speak. The 6th wife of the He family, Ying, looked at the worried 3rd wife, Yun, and then at her tired mother, Song Shi, and cursed inwardly. This Jiang is really a troublemaker. She used to run around without saying anything, but now everyone is gone, causing everyone to worry about her. She silently prayed in her heart, but don't let anything happen. This girl is a bit spoiled and annoying, but she has never done anything outrageous. If something happens to her, how can Auntie explain it to Grandpa? Besides, Grandpa's body thinking of this, her heart became even heavier. My thoughts were in chaos, and a servant ran to the flower hall and reported, Madam, I have found the 7th lady. Song quickly stood up and said, Where is it? Is 7th lady okay? The servant replied, It said that Wei Lu and his team met on their way to Chu Mountain. The person who came back first to report that Lady Qi was injured. Song was startled and urgently asked, Is there anything serious? The servant shook her head and said, The messenger didn't say it clearly, only that the 7th lady and her companions are almost home. Song frowned and turned his head to command the person next to him, Go quickly and invite the doctor. After speaking, she reminded the steward Qin Yu, Keep an eye on the yard of the Lord Lang. He is not in good health, so don't let anyone disturb the Lord Lang. He summoned his 2 daughters and said, Come with me to welcome them. Song led his men to the front door, and the news had also been received from the 2nd and 3rd rooms. Sister-in-law, did you hear that Jiang has been found? Did you say she was injured? 3rd Lady Feng greeted her. This 7th lady runs around everywhere every day. Okay, did something happen this time? Although she was not the eldest lady's biological child, she remembered that she was raised under the name of the Song family and became the eldest daughter of the eldest family. Everything you eat and use should be tight with her first. On weekdays, relying on the favor of the head of the family, he behaves recklessly and shows little respect towards his elders. Unfortunately, Song Shi was like a clay figure, following her in every way. It's fortunate that he's not a son, otherwise, with the respect of the family head, there might be other people in the mansion involved. Song Shijian was worried about He Lingjiang's injury, and his face was a bit bad. Hearing Feng Shijian's words, he just nodded coldly. Feng made a fuss and stood awkwardly next to his second wife, Wu. Wu turned his head to look at her, shook hands, and stood quietly on the side. The disappearance of the seventh lady was transmitted back to the mansion during the Ying period. Yun Fu, who was driving, ran back to report that the seventh lady was staying at Yinju Temple. In the evening, she said she wanted to go out to eat, but no one followed. As a result, both Qingzhu and Qiongji had prepared their toiletries, but how could they not see the seventh lady return? The two of them hurriedly searched for it, but couldn't find it. Later, even invited Taoist priests from the temple to search together, but there was no trace. Yun Fu rushed back overnight and rushed to his home to report the news as soon as the city gate opened. The second and third ladies received the news and quickly got up, but they didn't go to bed again afterwards. A few gentlemen and ladies with only 2 or 3 bedrooms were still hiding it, so they had not come out at this moment. They waited in front of the door for about a cup of tea before seeing a man carrying someone on his back and walking into the field of vision. The head and face of the person on his back were tightly covered, and Wei Lu was still holding a large umbrella on the side. Feng looked up at the sky. It was a sunny day, the winter sun, with only a hint of coolness. A man carried a person on his back and entered the mansion gate. As Song looked at He Lingjiang Lu's clothes outside, covered in dirt and dirty, her heart tightened. She walked up and whispered, "Lingjiang, are you okay?" "No problem." A hoarse and dark voice came from the tightly wrapped clothes. Song's heart skipped a beat, but the sound sounded too unpleasant. She leaned over, trying to lift the clothes that He Lingjiang had covered her head to see how badly she was injured, but was avoided by her side. A man said, "Madam, seventh lady is currently unable to bask in the sun." Song wanted to ask again, but knew it was not the right time, so she had to say, "Send Lady 7 back to her room first, and the doctor will come soon." Upon hearing this, a man carried He Lingjiang behind his back and headed towards her yard. Wei Lu handed the cloth umbrella to the little maid next to him and said, "Don't let Lady 7 sunbathe." A man walked quickly, and the little maid took the big umbrella and hurriedly ran to follow. He Yunchu and He Yunjia were worried about her injuries and quickly followed her. Song looked at her back with a hint of concern in her eyes. After a moment, she turned around and ordered, "The seventh lady has been found. Everyone should return to their respective positions and fulfill their duties. Don't let this cause chaos. The people in the mansion must be more cautious in their words and actions, not to cause trouble. Those in charge, please take good care of the people under your command." Between the words, there was already a hint of pressure. Everyone around me lowered their heads. Song slowed down her voice and turned to the second and third ladies, saying, "Sisters and sisters, you have been worried about the tiredness of following us today. Let's go back to your room and rest first." "Okay. Sister-in-law is also tired. Let's go back first. If there is anything, just send someone to shout." Feng suppressed her own caution. After speaking, he retired together with the Wu family. After explaining to everyone, Song looked at Wei Lu and said in a deep voice, "Come with me to the flower hall." End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Untreated. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Untreated. After calling Wei Lu to the flower hall and holding off the servants, Song asked him, what exactly happened to Lady Qi. Wei Lu shook his head and said, "I'm not sure. We were supposed to follow Lord Sanlang to Mount Chu. Lord Sanlang led someone on horseback to take a step ahead, and I led someone to rush over from behind. On the way, I met Lady Qi walking towards the city gate alone. Alone. Qingzhu Qiongji didn't follow. Song frowned. Yes. At that time, we were in a hurry to make our way, but our man recognized her in time. I saw that Lady Qi was seriously injured, so I decided to take her back to the mansion for treatment and send someone to tell the third lord that Lady Qi had been found, so he could bring someone back. Where did Lady Seven get hurt? The little one saw that she had a big bump on her forehead and was covered in mud, as if she had fallen from a high place. However, Wei Lu paused. It seems that Lady Seven's throat has also been injured. I don't know the specific situation. After thinking for a moment, he continued, when she was outside the city, Lady Seven also said that she was not feeling well and couldn't bask in the sunlight right now. Song thought of the appearance of He Lingjiang Fangkai and furrowed her brows unconsciously, saying, I can't bask in the sunlight. I don't know what kind of symptom this is. She sighed and said to Wei Lu, thank you for your hard work. Go to your account and pay 50 taels of silver, and take it to warm up with your subordinates. Wei Lu clasped his fists in gratitude. Song waved his hand and said, you go rest first. Control your subordinates well, do more and speak less. Yes, Wei Lu lowered his head and retreated. Song pressed her eyebrows and let out a sigh. Qi Nyangzi is only 3 months younger than Yun Jia, and even after turning the year, she will be 14 years old. When she reaches the 15th line of mourning in hairpin ceremony, she can immediately be called the mother.in.law. I have been missing all night now and have returned with injuries. There are so many pairs of eyes in the mansion that I cannot hide them. Even though she has always been indulgent in her actions, this matter is not good for her reputation and impact. At present, we can only restrain everyone in the mansion. However, governing the heavens and the earth, human mouths are the most difficult to manage. Otherwise, where would so much gossip come from? She walked out of the flower hall and looked at Chen Yu waiting outside, saying, is the doctor here? It's already here, in the yard of Lady Seven. Let's go and take a look. She was worried about He Lingjiang's injury, and after dealing with these matters, she went over to watch. As soon as Song walked outside He Lingjiang's yard, she heard a chaotic scene inside. Alman stood guard in front of the house, with a great momentum of one person guarding the gate and 10,000 people unable to open it. He Yunjia was patting the door of He Lingjiang's room and shouting, Lingjiang, please open the door quickly. The doctor is here, let him in to treat you. The door didn't open, and there was no sound coming from inside. He Lingjiang, open the door. If you're injured, treat it quickly. Do you want it to get worse and worse? He Yunchu also approached and advised, yes, Jiang, hurry up with treatment to recover quickly. Aren't you fond of horseback riding? When you recover from your injuries, let's go hunting on the farm. The room is still silent. Song stepped into the courtyard and frowned as she looked at the crowd, why is it so noisy? He Yunjia stomped his feet and said, Auntie, please ask Jiang not to open the door or let the doctor in for treatment. Song Shi looked over and saw Dr. Sun standing in the courtyard, carrying a medicine box, with a helpless expression on his face. This patient is not allowed to enter, and there is that black girl guarding the door. What else can we do? She walked up to the door and lightly tapped twice, Ling Jiang, let Dr. Sun treat you. The door remained silent, and she wanted to persuade again. A hoarse voice came out. I'm fine, I don't need to see a doctor. Song said, did you have a cut on your forehead? If you have a scar on your body, it won't be good. Let Dr. Sun show you. Also, is your throat injured? We need to see if it's serious. The voice inside the door replied, just apply some medicine on your forehead. You accidentally cut your throat, and it will be fine in a few days. Song frowned, feeling even more worried. Cutting her throat is not a small matter. It's just hurting my throat. I'll take a few days to recover. The doctor will keep the medicine, and I will use it myself. Do you have any other injuries on your body? Sighed Song helplessly, perhaps speaking a bit too much. The voice took a few breaths before saying, nothing. A faint breath came. I'm tired and want to sleep for a while. Alman is guarding and not allowing anyone to disturb me. Upon hearing the instructions from the seventh lady, Alman immediately responded loudly, don't worry, seventh lady. Alman will definitely guard you well. Yinjia angrily glared at her, wondering where the black girl came from. Afterwards, the room fell silent again. Song gently advised a few more words, but there was no response in the room, and no one could break through the door. She reluctantly walked up to Dr. Sun and said, excuse me, Dr. Sunday. You went all the way for nothing. Jiang accidentally fell and got hurt, which made her feel unhappy. That's why she used some small temper. No problem. Dr. Sun waved his hand, and the young ladies all took good care of their appearance, feeling embarrassed at the moment. There were also people who didn't want to see anyone. Since Lady 7 is unwilling to see a doctor, there is nothing she can do. I just heard from Madam about her injuries. Some of the medicines here may be symptomatic and can be used for now. As he spoke, he took out 2 boxes of ointment and a bottle of pills from the medicine box. This is by Yu Xingji Gao. If there are abrasions, scratches, or cuts, as long as the wound is not too deep and you persist in using it for 2 months, there will be no scars left. This bottle is Maidong Yin Huang Wan, which can moisturize the throat and eliminate inflammation in the throat. However, it is better to prescribe the medicine after diagnosis and treatment, as it will be better. Song reached out to take it, his tone filled with helplessness. This child is being mischievous, maybe we'll invite you over again in the future. It's okay, Madam can send someone to shout when the time comes. After thinking for a moment, Song asked again, Dr. Sun, it's just that Jiang suddenly couldn't bask in the sun, otherwise she would feel uncomfortable all over. I don't know why. Upon hearing this, Dr. Sun frowned and his old face, which was full of grooves, showed a hint of the vicissitudes of time. You can't bask in the sun. I have heard of this situation before. Some people, due to their physical condition, may feel uncomfortable when dealing with ordinary things from others. Seeing that Song was puzzled, he explained, for example, peanuts are common, but some people who accidentally consume peanuts may develop rashes all over their bodies and even die as a result. There have been records in ancient books that once someone is exposed to sunlight, they may develop rashes all over their body and feel uncomfortable. But Jiang had never experienced such a situation before. Just like some people who used to be able to eat peanuts, but suddenly couldn't eat peanuts due to soil and water changes or external stimuli, this situation also exists. As for which kind of seventh lady really belongs, after all, I haven't had a pulse diagnosis, and I dare not draw conclusions at the moment. Song frowned slightly and said, how should we treat it? Dr. Sun currently has no way to solve this problem. I can only ask Lady 7 to pay more attention and avoid exposure to sunlight. At 4 o'clock a year, most of the scenery in Linchuan is sunny, and it is difficult to avoid the sunlight in daily life. But there's no other way. Song thanked Dr. Sun and asked Qinyu to take him to the accounting room to collect the medical fee. The maids in the yard stood on the side with a bewildered expression. The seventh lady was injured, but she refused to let the doctor see her, nor did she let anyone in to serve her. Qingzhu and Xiongji were not present, and they didn't know what to do. Song felt that she had sighed a bit on this day, and she advised Ah Man, take good care of seventh lady. When she wakes up, remember to take the medicine for her to use. Qinyu, go to the kitchen and tell her to go down. The kitchen has congee for the seventh lady. It's lighter and she can use it when she wakes up. Don't eat anything recently. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Sewn. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Sewn. He Yunchu and He Yinjia walked over. Auntie, Are you really not letting her treat it? What can we do if Jiang is not willing? Don't stay here either, go back first. When Jiang wakes up, you can come see her again. When there is someone to accompany her, she will feel a little better and most likely be willing to let the doctor come for treatment. Yinjia poked Yunchu's arm and said, Sister, is the wound on Lingjiang's forehead very deep? When she comes back, she covers her head and face, and she doesn't want to see anyone. Do you think she? Don't talk nonsense. Song turned around and glared at her. Yinjia could only silently swallow the words, disfigured. Jiang just broke his forehead. Dr. Sun's ointment has always been effective and won't leave any scars. As sisters, don't talk nonsense, let alone mention this matter in front of her to make her unhappy. Song scolded the two before ordering them back to their own yard. Although she said so, she was also worried that Lingjiang wouldn't see anyone because of the wound on his head. After returning to the room, he called Chen Yu in and said, Go and take out that jar of hibiscus cream and send it to 7th lady. Chen Yu exclaimed in surprise, Madam, isn't this what you left for the 3rd lady? This hibiscus cream was bought by the Song family leader at a high price from a familiar doctor when he was doing business in Yingdu. I heard that the nobles in the palace use it if they accidentally bump into it. Not only can it remove scars and promote skin growth, but it can also make the skin fairer. This is a palace secret recipe that has never been passed down. The Song family has 2 daughters waiting to be married, and the young lady has delicate skin. The head of the Song family specially found a way and bought several cans at a high price to make a heavy dowry for the daughters. Thinking that Sanyangzi would also get married this year, she also gave a jar to the Song family. Song waved his sleeve and said, Take it. Just find something else for Yunchu. If there are scars on the body of the young lady's family, it is indeed not beautiful. Moreover, the face of Lady Qi is unparalleled in the entire city of Linchuan, and it would be a pity if she only left scars like this. In Lingjiang's courtyard, the maidservants were given orders and each worked hard. It was winter, and the grass and trees in the courtyard were inevitably scattered. However, a red plum tree in the southeast corner bloomed just right, dispelling a bit of depression and coldness. Alman moved a small stool, propped up his chin, and sat quietly in front of the door, watching the little maidservants playing around in the corridor. The people inside the room have taken off their clothes that were previously covered and sat in front of the dressing table. The bronze mirror reflected her appearance, but she was only 14 or 15 years old, with a palm-sized face, eyebrows trimmed like a painting, and eyes like glass. His face was a bit too pale, but he looked like a new moon with a halo, like flowers and trees piled up in snow, stunning but also filled with pity. This is a very beautiful girl. It's just that, this is not her face. She lifted her hand and took off the cloth strip that wrapped around her neck. There was a thin and long cut between her neck, and the blood had solidified. Her skin and flesh were slightly turned out, and her mouth was wide open, making it even more terrifying on her thin and white neck. Fingertips gently caressed the wound, and the cut was neither slanted nor slanted, just cutting through the throat. The wound is neither deep nor shallow, and coincidentally it can make people die with a heart-wrenching cold. The experience of Lady Qi is obviously not that simple. Between breaths, it seemed as if one could feel the breath drilling out through that crack. This little lady is no longer there. She sighed and the cut throat made a faint hissing sound. She couldn't help frowning and wrapped the wound again, feeling a little better. On the small table outside, there were still unfinished needlework from the maids. She got up and searched for something suitable. Aman, who was guarding outside the door, couldn't help but ask, Madam Seven, are you awake? Do you want to eat something? After a moment of silence inside the room, he replied, I want to take a shower and bring water in. After hearing this, Aman immediately asked the maids to arrange it. She moved the bathtub into the house alone and brought in hot water. The curtain on the bed has been lowered, and the figure of the 7th lady can be vaguely seen. The maidservants lowered their heads, set aside the bathing utensils and changing clothes, and then retreated with amen. When the door closed and the room regained silence, the person got out of bed, cleaned themselves from top to bottom, and then changed into clean clothes. The needle and thread she had found earlier were being placed on the bed by her. A needle is an embroidery needle, and the thread is a colorful thread. If that skilled embroiderer were to come, she would definitely be able to embroider a beautiful picture. However, what needs to be embroidered right now is extraordinary. She sat cross-legged on the bed, pulled out a strand of thread, and placed an embroidery needle in front of her. Then, she took a deep breath and kneaded the formula in her hand. This body was extremely weak, and when she woke up earlier, she struggled and only walked a few miles. It took a long time for a trace of true energy to gather in the body. Her heart couldn't help but relax. Fortunately, this body, like her, belongs to a purine body, and it is much easier to cultivate mystical skills compared to ordinary people. In addition, I have already gained insights in my practice, so if I continue to do it now, I will naturally achieve twice the result with half the effort. She felt the condensed breath inside her body carefully, guiding it to surround her for a long time before returning it to the dantian area. A faint warmth emanated from dantian, giving this cold and icy body a hint of warmth. She condensed her breath, clasped her fingers together, and drew a divine talisman in the air against the needle and thread in front of her. She pushed her right palm slightly and attached the talisman's power to it. Then he took a needle and thread and sat down again in front of the dressing table. She brought the bronze mirror to the front of the dressing table, facing the wound on her neck. Those hands were smooth and delicate, without any scars, with slender fingers and round and plump nails. They were made of delicate soft jade and chopped spring onions, growing in fragrant luo chui leaves. At this moment, he was following the edge of the knife and flipping open a slit in the flesh on his neck. His scallion white fingertips pierced through the red flesh and finally felt half of the broken throat. She fumbled a little, then picked up the needle and thread, threading it into the mirror. The girl tilted her head slightly, taking every stitch and thread very seriously. If someone didn't know the truth, they would really think she was embroidering their beloved Lopa. The experience of air leakage even after taking a breath is really uncomfortable. Even if the needle and thread have been sealed, she tries her best to make the stitches as fine as possible. Outside the throat was the layer of flesh on the neck, which she patiently sewed together one by one. By the time everything is completed, it's almost noon. Looking at the 3 or 4 inch long wound with fine and neat stitches, even if it was on her neck, she couldn't help but praise herself, good needlework. Even a master who always complains about not being able to make needles and thread can't resist stabbing. Are you embroidering flowers with an iron pestle instead of needles and thread? Just the location of this wound is still frightening. The silk thread that has been applied has the power of coagulation, but it only causes the wound to stick together and cannot truly heal the wound on this body. Lightly touch with fingertips, there is a slight fluctuation to the touch. In order to avoid scaring others, she searched for a plain silk in the room, cut it 2 fingers wide, and wrapped it around her neck to completely cover the wound. The boudoir of Lady He Chi is fresh and elegant. There is also a painting of Spring Dawn in Linchuan hanging on the wall, with clear and elegant strokes and colors. In the morning smoke, willow branches are exposed, and a bay of canal water flows around the city. Mandarin ducks and white pheasants fly and perch. Several girls and children leaned against the railing to gaze at the flying pheasant on the water. The left side of the painting is inscribed with the words, "In the spring of the Gingchen year, he sure ordered Jiang to paint." However, this girl named Ling Jiang can no longer wait for this spring day to come. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Being a Person. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Being a person. Ling Jiang is no longer here, so what about her? Just as she thought of this, the majestic force in her divine soul rushed towards her with a thunderous force. She couldn't help but tremble all over, gritting her teeth to endure the tearing pain, and beads of sweat as big as beans oozed from her forehead. Her entire soul was intimidated by the pressure, unable to move for a moment, and her heart felt even more miserable. She was now just a ghost attached to someone else's body. Not only can't I be myself, but I can't even mention, think, or recite my previous name. With the help of Jiang's body, it seems that she can only become Jiang now. It's just that, she squinted her eyes and looked outside. The winter sunshine, originally warm and pleasant, is like a raging fire to her. This blazing fire is not burning this body, but her ghost. In the first volume of the Jing, it is said, "The way of heaven is clear, and the way of earth is brilliant. Cause and effect are natural, and heaven and earth are not deceived. Heaven and earth cannot be deceived." In this world, most dead people are immediately hooked up with divine souls and return to the underworld of Mount Tai. Even if one has a persistent heart and refuses to leave, they are just wandering at night. How dare they openly expose themselves to the sunlight? Of course, I dare not, I cannot. She touched her chest, which was supposed to jump, calm like a stagnant pool of hot blood that was about to boil, but cold like ice, so cold that she wanted to tremble. Can one still be called a person, if their blood is cold, their body has no heartbeat, and they cannot see light? However, with a body, one can always go with the world and do unfinished things. She turned to comfort herself. The 25th volume of the Jing also states, "The way of heaven and earth is reversed when it is extreme, and when it is surplus, it is lost. It is lonely, independent but not changed, and when it is in circulation but not dangerous, it can be borne." She smiled, although she didn't let her live, she didn't let her die either. Since that's the case, she should work hard to become a person first. Well, let's start with Jiang. When it was time for dinner, a man asked her outside, "Seventh lady, do you want to bring the food in?" "Can." The maidservant rushed in and arranged the dishes one by one on the table outside. After setting up the dishes, the maid stood at the table and looked up quietly. The seventh lady was still in the inner room and never came out. After a while, a voice came from the inner room. "You go out first, don't wait." Yes, the maid walked out the door and turned around to close it. Jiang sat at the table, perhaps because she was injured and her diet was quite light. She drank some clear congee with a small dish and put down her dishes. She walked into the inner room, put down the curtain, and then ordered, "Let's withdraw." The maid was ordered to tidy up the food on the table, and the room quickly regained its previous quietness. Amon, who was guarding the door, suddenly spoke up and said, "Madam Qi, the sisters Qingzhu and Qiongji have already returned and are still kneeling outside." Green bamboo, Qiongji. On the way back earlier, the audience mentioned during their conversation that she should be the close maid of Lady He Qi, and she also had some time to spare. I don't know how she had an accident with these two maids present. What did they say? A man said, after the two sisters returned, they went to be summoned by the lady to inquire. They said that you went out to eat after dinner yesterday and didn't let anyone follow you. Later, when they went to find you, they couldn't find you anymore. The third master also took people to Yingju temple to check, and it seems that you fell off a low cliff on the mountain. A man patted his chest and said, "Fortunately, Lady Seven is fine." Falling down. Jiang gently brushed the silk around his neck, and this injury was not something that could be thrown out. "What else are you saying? Qingzhu and Qiongji sisters don't know how you came back. When we got home, they were still busy searching for you in Chu Mountain. It seems that everyone in the mansion is also confused about this." A man was curious and said, "Why did you just walk back on your own first?" Alman has a simple personality. The others in the mansion thought she had been abducted or encountered something difficult to say, so she disappeared inexplicably in the Chu Mountain. She didn't dare to ask her for a moment, only wanted to slowly inquire. Jiang explained to her through the door, "I accidentally fell to the foot of the mountain and fainted. When I woke up, my head felt dizzy and swollen. I couldn't remember many things, so I walked forward based on my feelings. As for how far I went and where I went, I don't know. Ah, man exclaimed in surprise, seventh lady means. Don't you remember what happened? Madam doesn't know yet. Do you want to tell Madam? Do you need to call a doctor to come and see? Don't break your head. You go tell Madam not to worry. I don't have anything to do, maybe I'll remember in a few days, so there's no need to hire a doctor. Almond couldn't understand that seventh lady refused to see a doctor no matter what. They all secretly said that the seventh lady didn't want to see anyone because she had broken her appearance. But in her opinion, Lady Seven is still very beautiful, and the scar on her head is not a big deal. Moreover, Zhao's mother had also sent ointment over earlier, so she probably won't leave even a trace soon. Almond looked at the green bamboo Qiongji kneeling in the courtyard. The Song family has never intervened in dealing with the people in the Seven Women's courtyard. As soon as they returned from their wife, they knelt in the courtyard. Due to searching for someone on the mountain all night and worrying about the safety of seventh lady, their eyes were both red and swollen. Having been busy until now without any food or drink, coupled with the fact that the two have been kneeling for over an hour, their lips have turned slightly white. A man leaned close to the door and asked, what should the two sisters, Qingzhu Qiongji, do? This matter has nothing to do with them, let them go back and rest first. Man replied happily. The two sisters are good at taking care of her on weekdays and often give her some chestnut candies. Now there is no need to be punished again, and Amon is happy for them. Qingzhu Qiongji heard Amon say that the seventh lady asked her two to go back and rest, and her eyes turned red again. The seventh lady had such a big incident that she almost died, but the two maidservants were not there to protect her. The two of them were worried for the whole night, and now they are even more ashamed to hear her say so. They are 2 or 3 years older than Heling Jiang, both of whom were given by the head of the He family to Heling Jiang. They have been with her since the age of 6 or 7. The two were taught from a young age to take good care of the seventh lady. Qingzhu has a stubborn personality and can endure hardships. She has been focused on martial arts since childhood, and even the guards in the mansion are not her match. Qiongji is more meticulous and thoughtful in her work. Although she has ordinary martial arts skills, she is knowledgeable in medical skills. When Heling Jiang travels, she takes care of her. For so many years, the two of them have been protecting Heling Jiang and have never made any mistakes. But now I almost lost someone and was injured, and I can imagine the sadness in my heart. Qiongji looked up and asked Amon, is the injury of seventh lady a big problem? Qi Nyangzi refused to see the doctor, but when she was outside the city, Man and Wei Lu had also seen her injuries up close. Apart from feeling a bit disheveled, the bruise on her head looked quite serious. As for her throat, which was wrapped in a cloth strip, it may have hurt her throat and she needs to be taken care of. Man shook his head and said, seventh lady said, she's fine. Just apply some ointment on her forehead and let her throat rest for a few days. It seems like that's all she needs. Qiongji is not at ease and wants to take a look for herself. But after the seventh lady returned to her mansion, she didn't see anyone. She even avoided the maidservants for bathing and eating, and remained alone in the room. She is also powerless at the moment, so she can only go back to her room first, prepare some skin-nourishing ointment, flip through her medical skills, and see how to solve the sudden inability of seventh lady to sunbathe. As they walked out of the yard, Qingzhu and Qiongji couldn't help but look back at Heling Jiang's tightly closed door. Their eyes dimmed, but their hearts were determined. In the future, they must not take it lightly anymore. Even if they risked their lives, they would definitely protect the seventh lady thoroughly. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Forgetting. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Forgetting. A man thought about telling his wife about the situation of the seventh lady, so he called a little maid over and asked her to guard the door for the seventh lady. He then ran all the way to the courtyard of the Song family. After hearing Amon's words, Song was surprised and said, "What? Don't remember?" "Yeah." Seventh lady said that when she fell, she might have hit her head and forgotten many things. Man nodded. "Well." Song didn't know what to say. "Let's ask the doctor to take a look." Man scratched his head and said, "That's what I said." But the seventh lady didn't want to see it. She said maybe it'll be better in a few days. Song sighed and said, "How could you be so stubborn? If you can't remember it all along, what should you do?" Amon was puzzled and said, "So what's the point? As long as she's still the seventh lady, isn't it okay?" "I can't remember, big guy can tell her." Song frowned. The key is what he said to the groom. Other people wouldn't say how sad seventh lady would be if she didn't even recognize the Langzhu. Chen Yu, who was standing beside her, knew her thoughts and comforted her, saying, "Madam, there used to be a situation like the seventh lady in my hometown village. The person went up the mountain to pick herbs, accidentally rolled down the mountain and hit his head, forgetting about his family and past. However, his daily walking, sitting, and socializing were not greatly affected, as long as someone nearby took care of him. The family took good care of him, but after 2 or 3 months, he slowly remembered. I see you, don't worry too much. We have just seen the clothes that Lady 7 changed and asked man. Fortunately, Lady 7 did not harm her life this time. Although she suffered some injuries, the wound on her forehead didn't look deep. Although her throat was still a bit hoarse, she could still speak normally. When she went missing, she didn't encounter any criminals. This was already fortunate. She couldn't help but clap her hands and bow. As for the loss of memory, let's slowly take note of it. Even if we meet the Langzhu, let the seventh lady be careful to cover it up and avoid it. That's all I can do. Song said to Amon, since seventh lady has called for you to stay by her side, let's stay in seventh lady's yard to serve her from now on, and there's no need to go to the stove anymore. As an example, we'll count it as a second class maid. Amon heard that he had stayed in the seventh lady's courtyard to serve, and his expression was pleasantly surprised. Thank you, madam. Song waved her hand and said, "Thank you, Madam Chi." Since she spoke up, that's probably what she meant. Amon nodded, and the seventh lady naturally wanted to thank her as well. 2 years ago, the seventh lady brought herself into the mansion and gave her food and a roof to live on. Now, calling myself to come and serve her, I will definitely do my best to repay her. In the courtyard of Jiang, the warm afternoon sun was warm, and the little maid sat on the chair in front of the door drowsy. A person walked into the courtyard, and the little maid was startled. She instantly woke up and hurriedly bowed, saying, "Ah Lang." The head of the He family, He Xianqing, waved his hand and said, "I heard that Lady Qi was injured and refused to be treated. I happened to be back at the mansion today to come and see her." He Xianqing served as the county magistrate in the county below Linchuan County and is currently the only official in the He family. He really likes He Lingjiang, who is often referred to as the arrogant niece of others. Although He Lingjiang is a bit stubborn, he is also very intelligent. He Xianqing loves playing chess, and everyone in the mansion can accompany him, and he can also play equally, which is her. As for indulgence, even a little bit of indulgence is not a big deal in the little lady's family. Just one thing, He Lingjiang is a painting enthusiast who prefers to personally search for minerals and plants used as pigments everywhere, unable to calm down and delve into chess. If not, He Xianqingdu said that even he may not be able to catch up with her chess skills. Because of this, whenever He Xianqing sees something fun on a regular basis, he will bring her a copy. The tiger skin parrot in the cage under the corridor was still a gift from He Xianqing to He Lingjiang. Seeing him, he immediately shouted, Erlang Lord, Erlang Lord." He Xianqing looked for the sound and saw the parrot jumping up and down in the cage. He shook his head helplessly and then walked to the door, gently tapping twice. "Lingjiang, it's Uncle Air, I'm here to see you." There is no sound in the room. He knocked on the door again and called out to her in a low voice. Still a silence. He couldn't help but frown. The little maid lowered her head and explained, since seventh lady came back, she hasn't seen anyone, not even lady. She may want to rest for a while, but if not, Lang should go back first. Jiang shook his head and continued to face the door, saying, Ling Jiang, Uncle Air heard that you went to Chu Mountain this time to find mineral pigments. I also have a good piece of lapis lazuli at my place. Do you want it? This lapis lazuli is also valuable for making accessories, and using it as a pigment can only be considered a luxury. The sound of footsteps inside the house went from far to near. Yes. Upon hearing this, Jiang smiled and said, I knew you had been coveting this lapis lazuli for a long time. He turned around and instructed the little maid next to him, go to the second room now, find my attendant Shirqing, and fetch it. You 7 women have been staring at this piece of blue and gold stone from me for a long time. The little maid didn't know what to do, but man asked her to guard the door. The voice of Jiang came from inside the door. Go and get it. The little maid heard this and hurriedly ran out of the yard. All right, since you've taken Uncle Air's blue gold stone, don't be stubborn. Everyone is worried about your injury, let Uncle Air come in and take a look. Jiang whispered. Jiang pushed open the door and saw her sitting upright at a small table outside, pale in color. The area where her forehead was scratched had already been wrapped, and a circle of 2-finger-wide silk was still wrapped around her neck. Jiang scrutinized her carefully, his eyes filled with worry. Look at you, how did you hurt yourself? Jiang shook his head and said, I don't know either. You don't even know it yourself. They said, I should have fallen from a high place. Maybe I fell on my head, I don't remember many things. Jiang exclaimed in surprise, I don't even remember how you fell off. Yeah. My mind is completely blank now, and I'm afraid I can't even recognize my family members. Jiang looked at him. The second son of the He family, who was about 30 or 40 years old, was still wearing a curved collar and long-sleeved official uniform, as if rushing back to his mansion before he could change it. You say you're my uncle. Jiang couldn't help but twitch his lips and said, you don't even remember second uncle, do you? Jiang tilted his head to look at him and said, I seem to have some impressions, but I can't remember them clearly. Jiang couldn't help but sigh, you don't remember anything, does your mother know? I called on to speak. Jiang was still waiting to speak, but was interrupted by Jiang, don't advise me to see a doctor anymore. I said I won't see. These injuries are not a big deal, just apply some ointment and rest for a while. Jiang frowned and said, you child, why are you still so stubborn? He took a step forward and looked at the silk wrapped around her neck, asking, what's wrong with your neck? But you're also injured. Jiang slightly looked up and brushed the silk on his neck with his fingertips, saying, there is a wound. It may have been scratched by fine stones or grass leaves on the edge of the cliff when I rolled down. The wound is a bit deep, but it's not a big deal. I have already applied ointment myself. I just hope, don't leave any scars, she sighed lightly. Indeed, I still have a young daughter's mentality, hurt like this, only concerned about whether or not to leave scars. Jiang carefully examined her wound again, but unfortunately, it was tightly wrapped by Jiang and the specific situation was unknown. He sighed helplessly and said to her, the location of this wound is so dangerous, it's fortunate that it didn't harm your life. You should be careful, don't be so careless again in the future. Jiang once again instructed her to wait for the little maid to bring the lapis lazuli before shaking her head and reluctantly returning. Although she lost her memory, this girl's love for these minerals still doesn't diminish. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Affordability. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10 Affordability. He Xianqing saw He Jiang with his own eyes and felt much relieved. He then went to the Song family and told her in detail about He Jiang's situation. I understand what my second brother said. Jiang doesn't remember the past now, and no matter how anxious we are, we can only wait for her to slowly recover. But the groom has been bedridden all along. I have been keeping this matter from Jiang, fearing that he might worry too much. You know, after winter, the condition of the groom suddenly worsens. It's hard to say whether he can survive this winter. Speaking of this, Song couldn't help but turn his head and dipped his handkerchief into the corner of his eye. The current head of the He family is named He Xiangshan. He once served as a temple minister at Honglu Temple. 15 years ago, he resigned from his official position and returned to his hometown. He has not served since then. The He family is the magistrate of Linchuan, known as the family of Zhongming Dingshi, the family of poetry, books, and hairpins. However, this is true, and their ancestors were also important officials of the previous dynasty. Before the collapse of the previous dynasty's mansion, the great ancestor of the He family realized that something was wrong. He resigned from his official position and returned to his hometown with his family members, bravely retreating in a hurry and protecting this century-old prestigious family. From then on, the descendants of the He family no longer entered the officialdom, but relied on their ancestral business to make the He family even more prosperous and prosperous. Up to now, the great Zhou dynasty has been in existence for 55 years, and he is now the third ruler of the country, reigning for 15 years. Despite the external troubles of Beidi and Shi, the great Zhou dynasty, under the rule of 3 monarchs, was also known as Shanghai Yanheching. The Cui family of Jiangzhou, the Li family of Zhaojun, and the Lu family of Fanyang successively had their children enter the new dynasty as officials. The He family is a century-old aristocratic family. How could they be inferior to those aristocratic families? The grandfather of the He family no longer wanted to remain silent here, so he responded to the imperial call and went to Yingdu. He Jiadalang and Erlang lived up to his expectations and successively passed the imperial examination, entering Honglu Temple and the Ministry of Works respectively. Later, when the crown prince went to the outskirts of Beijing for a trip, he unexpectedly fell in love with the 5 daughters of the He family and begged the sage to marry her as the crown princess. The He family has always had a beautiful appearance, and He Wunyang has an extremely beautiful appearance that no one in Ying can match. She comes from a wealthy family and is known for her talent and reputation. She is an impeccable saint, so she naturally agreed to the crown prince's request. In those years, the entire He family could be described as a cluster of blooming flowers and boiling oil. It's hard to imagine that good times don't last long. In just a few years, the crown prince and his consort will disappear. He Xiangshan also resigned from his official position and hurriedly returned to his hometown with his family. He no longer entered the officialdom, and even He Xianqing did not allow him to go to the capital. He only sought a small official position in Linchuan County. Song originally thought that there was nothing wrong with not being an official, and it would be a good thing to easily become a wealthy man. Unexpectedly, in recent years, the body of the groom has gradually declined, spending most of the year in bed. Now, it seems that he is on the verge of collapse. He Xianqing sighed and comforted her, "Sister-in-law, don't worry. I have sent people to various places to search for famous doctors, and Brother A will definitely get better." Song nodded, knowing that these were just comforting words. Over the years, she has invited countless doctors, including the Taoist priests in the Taoist temple and the great monks in the temple. She has even invited many martial arts masters, but the situation of the Langzhu has not improved at all. It is still getting worse now. The man in the big house was not prosperous. Song had a son before, but unexpectedly, he fell from a horse 8 years ago at the age of 15. Now, there is only one illegitimate son left with a mute disease. The brother of the fellow countryman of He Xiangshan, Silang Zhu, and the poet He, are also promiscuous and do not stay at home all day. Over the years, although the Song family has shared a lot for He Xiangshan, they have also relied heavily on the support of the second son He Xiancheng and the third son He Qianli. Song looked at him and said, "Second brother, I think he heard about Ling Jiang and hurried back, right? You've worked hard, go back and rest first, take a look at your younger siblings and a few children." He Xiancheng comforted her a few more words before heading to the second room. Afterwards, He Lingjiang confined himself in the room and never stepped out of the door. The dinner was still served by the maids in the outer room, with no one left to serve them. "I heard that He Lingjiang met He Xiancheng today." He Yunchu and He Yunjia couldn't help but urge the Song family to visit her after dinner. He Yunjia sat down at the table and looked at He Lingjiang, who was smeared with ointment on his forehead, saying, "It's not very serious either. It's just a small piece of it. You locked yourself in the room and didn't see anyone. I thought you were disfigured." Yunjia, Song gave her a glare. Okay, not to mention that. As for the young lady, even if she had a skin cut on her forehead, she felt heartbroken. Besides, He Lingjiang accidentally left a scar this time, so she shouldn't have been irritated. He Yunjia turned around and asked, "Do you really don't remember anything?" She pointed to herself and said, "Who am I?" He Yunjia. "Don't you remember that?" He Lingjiang glanced at her lightly and said, "Didn't mother just call your name?" He Yunjia felt that this glance was full of such profound meaning, and his gaze seemed to say that this well-behaved little lady had some bad brain. "You." She was so angry that she was about to jump, but was pressed down by He Yunchu. She angrily pointed at He Yunchu and asked, "So, who is this?" "I don't know. Are you pretending to be foolish?" "Why pretend to be silly? You haven't mentioned her name. I don't know, isn't it normal?" He Lingjiang looked puzzled by her thoughts. He Yunjia has nothing to say. He Lingjiang may have really broken his head, but even so, she is still so angry. He Yunchu smiled and pressed her, saying, all right, you two are still the same as before. When we meet, we have to argue." She smiled lightly and looked at He Lingjiang sitting upright, saying, "Lingjiang, I am your elder sister He Yunchu, I am the third." Then she pointed to He Yunjia and said, "Here, this He Yunjia is your sixth sister. You must remember, don't forget again." He Lingjiang nodded and said, "Okay, third sister." He then shouted to He Yunjia, "Sixth sister." He Yunjia exclaimed and widened her eyes, looking incredulous. This He Lingjiang is only 3 months younger than her, relying on her father and uncle's love for her. When did you see her either ignoring her or calling her by name? Calling her like this makes her feel a bit uncomfortable. She couldn't help but rub her arms. He Yunchu looked at her appearance and burst out laughing, while Song couldn't help but chuckle. "Sisters, even if they fight, they are also happy," he said. He Lingjiang nodded and said, "That's right." The scene of playing with peers was something she had never experienced before. She is so serious, which makes people feel even more amused. Song instructed her, "Lingjiang, you don't want to see a doctor, but you must persist in applying that ointment. Such a beautiful little lady, don't leave any scars. Take the silver yellow throat moistening pill left by Dr. Sun on time. If your throat is still uncomfortable, send someone to tell me." He Lingjiang whispered, "Thank you very much, mother." She had previously chatted with Amon and learned that He Lingjiang was not the biological child of the Song family, but rather the head of the He family, He Xiangshan, who brought him back from outside and raised him under her lap. Over the years, He Xiangshan's affection for her has far surpassed that of the legitimate He Yunchu and He Yunjia. As a legitimate wife, it is impossible for Song to have no resentment in her heart. But when it comes to treating the younger generation He Lingjiang, he has never been harsh, let alone involved in supporting or killing them. Although not considered close to her, it is rare to achieve such a level. Song looked at He Yunchu and the two of them again and said, "Jiang doesn't remember the past recently, and she can't go out to bask in the sun. Come and spend more time with her, sisters." He Yunchu nodded and said, I have recently obtained a new painting called Plum Blossom Stone Creek and Duck Painting. Jiang loves calligraphy and painting, and I will bring it over tomorrow. We can study and imitate it together. He Yinjia, however, was not interested in this and said, what's nice about this? But in the middle of winter, it's desolate outside, and there's really nothing to go out of. We might as well hide in our room and play Xuanlu. You know how to play. For a moment, everyone abandoned countless worries, and the brightly lit room was filled with laughter. In this dark night, it seemed gentle and approachable. End of this chapter.